Marcus Cole kicked the passenger window so hard, the steel toe of his boot split the safety glass on the first strike. Blood from his knuckles smeared across the doorframe as he reached through the jagged opening, cutting his forearm on a shard he didn't feel. Inside the buried SUV, a woman in a crimson dress was turning blue. Her lips had stopped trembling, which meant her body had stopped fighting. He had maybe 4 minutes before she died. What no one could have predicted was that saving this stranger's life would crack open a wound Marcus had spent 4 years sealing shut, and force him to confront the one truth he'd been running from since the night his wife took her last breath. Comment your city below so I can see how far this story has traveled. And if you're new here, hit subscribe. You don't want to miss what happens next. Marcus Cole's hands were still shaking when he grabbed the woman under her arms and pulled. Not from the cold, though the cold was brutal. Wind chill pushing 30 below. Snow coming sideways like the sky had split open and dumped everything it had. His hands were shaking, because the last time he'd held someone this still, this cold, this close to gone, it was Denise. And Denise hadn't made it. He pulled harder. The woman's head lolled against his chest, her dark hair matted with blood from a gash above her left temple. Her body was dead weight. Not helping, not resisting, just gone somewhere between consciousness and whatever came after. "Stay with me," Marcus said through gritted teeth. "Don't you do this. Don't you quit on me." No response, not even a flutter behind her closed eyelids. He got her out of the SUV and into the wind, and the storm hit them both like a freight train. Marcus staggered, nearly lost his footing on the ice beneath the snow. The woman, whoever she was, hung in his arms like a broken doll, her crimson dress soaked through, her skin the color of ash. 50 feet to his truck. 50 feet through knee-deep snow with a dying stranger in his arms and a wind that was trying to kill them both. He started walking. 20 feet in, his left boot hit a patch of black ice and his knee buckled. He went down on one side, twisting at the last second so his shoulder took the impact instead of her. Pain shot up his arm like electricity. He didn't stop, didn't even slow down, just got his feet under him and kept moving. "Everyone deserves to get home," he said. The words came out like a prayer, automatic, ancient. His father's words. Raymond Cole, 30 years of mountain search and rescue, pulling strangers out of wrecks and avalanches and frozen ditches until his own heart gave out on a Tuesday morning training run. Marcus reached the truck, wrenched the passenger door open with one hand, and laid the woman across the bench seat as carefully as he could. Her head hit the armrest, and she made a sound, a tiny, broken thing, barely human. But it was a sound, which meant she was alive. He slammed the door, ran around to the driver's side, and threw himself behind the wheel. His fingers were so numb he could barely turn the key. The engine coughed once, twice. On the third try it caught, and Marcus cranked the heat to maximum with hands that left bloody smears on the dial. "Come on," he said to the heater. "Come on, come on, come on." Cold air blasted from the vents. It would take minutes to warm up. Minutes she might not have. He pulled the emergency blanket from behind the seat, one of those thin silver space blankets, and wrapped it around her. Then he stripped off his own parka and piled it on top. The cab was freezing, but his body heat and the blanket would buy time. He put the truck in gear. The tires spun, caught, spun again. The truck lurched forward through the snow, fishtailing on the invisible road beneath. That's when she opened her eyes. Gray eyes. Storm cloud gray, completely unfocused, swimming with confusion and pain and something else. Fear. Raw, animal fear. Where? She started. You're okay, Marcus said, keeping his eyes on the nothing road ahead. You were in an accident. I got you out. I'm taking you somewhere warm. My phone. I need my... No cell service up here. Not in this weather. But I have to call. There's a meeting. Marcus will be... She said the name, and Marcus flinched. Not because of the coincidence, because hearing his own name come from this stranger's mouth, confused and desperate, reminded him of something he'd spent 4 years trying to forget. The way Denise had called his name at the end, reaching for him with hands she could no longer close. My name's Marcus, too, he said quietly. Marcus Cole. And right now, the only thing you need to worry about is staying awake. Can you do that for me? I'm fine, she said automatically. You're not fine. You're hypothermic, you've got a head wound, and your lips are the color of a bruise. So stay awake and keep talking. What's your name? Vivian. She blinked hard, correcting herself. Vivian Ashford. Okay, Vivian. Where were you headed? Denver, from Aspen. Charity gala. Her words were slurring, running together like watercolors in the rain. Had to leave early. Board meeting. Tuesday. Product launch. Marcus. My assistant Marcus. He's going to wait. Everyone's going to wait. Right now, it's just you and me and this road. She tried to sit up. Pain hit her. He could see it flash across her face like lightning, and she fell back against the seat with a gasp. My arm, she said. Something's wrong with my arm. Don't move it. Could be fractured. I'll look at it when we get somewhere safe. Where's somewhere safe? My cabin, about 15 miles east, if the road's still there. If? Figure of speech. It wasn't. Half the time in storms like this, the road disappeared completely under drifts. Marcus was driving on memory and instinct, following the ghost of a highway he'd traveled 1,000 times. The headlights showed nothing but white, an endless, suffocating wall of white that made the world feel 2 feet wide. Vivian was quiet for almost a minute. Then she said, I can't feel my feet. That's the cold. You were in that car a long time. How long were you out there before I found you? I don't know. I remember driving. The car started sliding. I hit something, a guardrail maybe, and then... She touched her temple, found the blood, stared at her fingers. How bad is it? You're going to have a headache for a week, but you're alive. Because of you. Because of luck. I almost drove past. Why didn't you? Marcus didn't answer right away. The truth was complicated. The truth involved a dead wife and a 9-year-old daughter, and a father whose voice still lived in his head saying the same 6 words over and over. My father used to say, everyone deserves to get home, he said finally. He worked search and rescue in these mountains his whole life. Died doing it, in a way. Heart attack at 58. I'm sorry. It was 5 years ago. You learned to carry it. Vivian studied him, or tried to, through eyes that kept losing focus. You've carried a lot. He didn't respond to that. Didn't need to. The evidence was all over him. The calluses, the lines around his eyes that were too deep for 34. The way he held the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping him upright. The truck hit a drift and bogged down. Marcus cursed, threw it in reverse, rocked it forward, reverse again. The tires whined, caught, and they broke through with a lurch that sent Vivian sliding on the seat. Sorry, he said. Don't apologize. Just get us there. Another mile. Another. The storm screamed around them, shaking the truck like a dog shaking a rat. Marcus's arms ached from fighting the wheel. His eyes burned from staring into the white void. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a clock was ticking. The cabin was still 7 miles away. The fuel gauge was dropping, and the woman beside him was getting colder, despite the blanket and the heater that was only now starting to push warm air. Vivian. Her eyes were closing. Stay awake. Talk to me. Tell me about this meeting you're missing. Board meeting. IPO. Going public. The words came slow, heavy. Everything David and I worked for. Who's David? The change in her was immediate. Something cracked behind her eyes. Not pain, not confusion, but grief. Old grief, the kind that lived in your bones.
My brother, she said softly. He died 3 years ago. Car accident. Vale Pass. Black ice. She turned her head to look out the window at the storm. Just like this.
Marcus felt his chest tighten. He understood that tone. Understood the way loss turned every ordinary moment into a reminder. Every winter storm into a replay of the worst day of your life. I'm sorry, he said, and meant it. We built the company together. Ashford Technologies. He was the genius, double doctorate, published researcher. I was the business side. After he died, She trailed off. I couldn't stop, couldn't slow down. If I kept working, kept building, kept achieving, then maybe it meant something. Maybe he didn't die for nothing. And if you stopped, then I'd have to feel it. Marcus said nothing, because he knew exactly what she meant.
After Denise died, he'd done the same thing. Worked until he couldn't see straight. Took every shift, every emergency call, every broken furnace and burst pipe in the county. Anything to avoid going home to the cabin where her absence filled every room like smoke. My wife died 4 years ago, he said. He hadn't planned to say it. The words just came out, pulled by some gravity he couldn't resist. Cancer. Pancreatic. 8 months from diagnosis to... He stopped. Swallowed. 8 months. Vivian was looking at him now. Really looking, through the haze of concussion and cold. What was her name?
Denise.
Tell me about her.
Why?
Because you're keeping me alive, and I want to know who's doing the saving.
Marcus almost smiled. Almost. She was the kind of person who made everything warmer just by walking into a room. Laughed too loud. Sang off key. Burned every meal she ever cooked, but served it like she was presenting at a 5-star restaurant. He paused.
She'd have liked you. How could you possibly know that?
She liked people who were tougher than they looked. Vivian let out a breath that might have been a laugh. I'm not tough. I'm sitting here wrapped in a space blanket, wearing a dress that costs more than most people's rent, bleeding from my head, and I can't feel my legs. I'm the opposite of tough. You're alive, and you're talking. In this storm, that's tough enough. The headlights caught something ahead. The old pine tree split by lightning, its Y shape unmistakable against the white. Marcus felt relief flood through him so hard his hands nearly slipped off the wheel. 1/2 mile, he said.
1/2 mile to what?
Home. The word came out before he could stop it, and it hit him like a punch. Home. The cabin he'd shared with Denise. The cabin where Zoe had taken her first steps and Denise had taken her last breath. The cabin that was more museum than home now, full of photographs and memories and the ghost of a life that had ended too soon. He was bringing a stranger there, a stranger in a crimson dress who'd lost her brother, the same way winter takes everything, suddenly, without warning, without mercy. The access road was brutal, drifts 3 feet deep in places. The truck bogged down twice, and twice Marcus rocked it free, his jaw clenched so tight his teeth ached. Vivian gripped the dashboard with her good hand, saying nothing, trusting him with a faith that felt heavier than it should have. When the cabin finally appeared, a dark square against the white, no lights, power clearly out, Marcus killed the engine and sat for a moment in the sudden quiet. His hands were still shaking. "We're here," he said. "The lights are off. Power's out. Storm knocked it out. But I've got a wood stove, kerosene lamps, enough supplies for a week. We'll be okay." He said it with a confidence he didn't entirely feel. The cabin was old. His father had built it in the 70s, and the roof had been worrying him since last winter. But it had survived 50 years of mountain weather. It would survive this. He went around to her side, opened the door, and lifted her out. She was lighter now, or maybe he was running on something beyond muscle. She tucked her face against his shoulder as the wind hit them, and he felt her whole body trembling. The front door was unlocked. Never any point locking it out here. He kicked it open and carried her inside, into the darkness of a home that hadn't felt like home in 4 years. He laid her on the leather couch, Denise's couch, the one thing he couldn't replace, and found matches in the kitchen drawer. The kerosene lamp caught on the first try, warm yellow light pushing back the darkness like a fist opening. And there she was, Vivian Ashford, bruised and bleeding and shaking with cold, wearing a ruined dress in a dead woman's house, looking up at him with those gray eyes that held more grief than a person her age should carry. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet," Marcus said, kneeling beside her with the first aid kit. "Storm's just getting started." He cleaned the gash on her temple with steady hands while she held perfectly still, not making a sound. He bandaged her arm, wrapped her swollen ankle, checked her pupils for signs of worsening concussion. Professional, methodical, the way his father had taught him. Treat the injuries, assess the situation, make a plan. "You need to get out of that dress," he said. "You need dry clothes." "I'm fine." "You're hypothermic in wet silk. You need dry clothes now." She looked at him. That CEO look, the one that probably made boardrooms go quiet. But Marcus had faced down blizzards that would eat boardrooms for breakfast. He didn't blink. "I'll get you something," he said. He went to the bedroom, to the closet where Denise's clothes still hung beside his, untouched for 4 years. He pulled out sweatpants, a flannel shirt, wool socks. His hands hesitated on the fabric. These were Denise's things. Denise's smell was probably still in them. Faint, but there. He brought them back, set them on the couch. "You can change behind that screen." Vivian looked at the clothes, then at him. Something passed across her face. Understanding, maybe. Recognition that these belonged to someone who wasn't here anymore. "Your wife's?" she asked quietly. "Yeah." She didn't say she was sorry, didn't say anything about it being okay or not okay. She just picked up the clothes and limped toward the screen, refusing his help. And Marcus stood by the fire he was building in the wood stove and listened to the storm try to tear his cabin apart. 2 minutes later. "The zipper. I can't reach it with my arm." He went to the screen's edge, kept his eyes on the wall. "Which side?" "Left." He reached around, found the zipper, pulled it down. His knuckles brushed her back, skin cold as stone, and he pulled away fast. "Thank you," she said. And the way she said it, quiet, without pretense, without the automatic politeness of someone used to managing every interaction, made something shift in Marcus's chest. Something he'd spent 4 years keeping locked down. He went back to the fire and fed it wood until the stove glowed. The cabin was warming. The lamps were lit. Outside, the mountain was doing its worst. Inside, a stranger was wearing his dead wife's clothes and bleeding on his couch. and Marcus Cole was feeling something he'd promised himself he'd never feel again. He was feeling alive, and that terrified him more than any storm. Vivian came out from behind the screen wearing Denise's clothes, and Marcus had to look away. Not because she looked like Denise. She didn't.
Denise had been taller, broader in the shoulders, with a warmth that radiated off her like heat from a stove. Vivian was smaller, sharper, the flannel shirt drowning her frame, the sweatpants bunched at her ankles. She looked like a kid playing dress-up in someone else's life. But seeing those clothes on a living, breathing woman, clothes he hadn't been able to touch in 4 years, hadn't been able to donate or pack away, or even move to the other side of the closet, did something to him that he wasn't ready for. She limped to the couch without asking for help, sat down hard, biting back a groan, pulled the space blanket around her shoulders, and stared at the fire through the stove's glass door. Marcus brought her soup, chicken noodle, from a can, heated on the stove in a dented pot. He poured it into 2 chipped mugs, because all their nice bowls had been Denise's, and he'd accidentally broken the last one 6 months ago and hadn't replaced it. "Here," he said, handing her one. "It's not fancy." "It's perfect," she said, and took a sip. The color was starting to come back to her face. Not much, but enough. Her lips weren't blue anymore. Her hands had stopped shaking around the mug. Marcus sat in his armchair across from her and drank his own soup in silence. The fire popped and settled. The wind screamed outside. The kerosene lamps threw shadows that danced on the walls like something alive. "You live here alone?" Vivian asked. "With my daughter, Zoe. She's 9. Marcus set his mug on his knee. "She's with her grandmother tonight, in town. Denise's mother." "You were supposed to pick her up?" "Tomorrow, but—" He nodded toward the windows where snow was piling against the glass like the mountain was trying to swallow the cabin whole. "That's not happening." "She must be worried about you." "Janet, that's her grandmother. She'll keep her calm. Zoe's tough. She's had to be." Vivian was quiet for a moment. Then, 4 years old when she lost her mother. 5. Old enough to understand Mommy was sick. Too young to understand she wasn't coming back. God. Vivian closed her eyes. Yeah. They sat with it. The weight of it. Marcus noticed that Vivian didn't try to fill the silence with platitudes. Didn't say Denise was in a better place. Didn't say time heals all wounds. Didn't say any of the useless, well-meaning things people had been saying to him for 4 years. She just sat with the pain of it, like she recognized it. Like she'd been carrying her own version of it long enough to know that words didn't help. "Tell me about Zoe," she said finally. Marcus felt the shift in his face, the softening that always happened when he thought about his daughter. He couldn't help it, couldn't hide it. She's 9 going on 40, reads everything she can get her hands on. Wants to be a veterinarian or an astronaut. Maybe both. She hasn't decided. He smiled. "She's got Denise's eyes and my stubbornness, which her grandmother says is a dangerous combination. She sounds wonderful. She's the reason I get up in the morning. The reason I didn't—" He stopped, took a breath. "She's everything." Vivian heard what he didn't say. He could tell by the way her expression changed. Not pity, not horror, just understanding. The understanding of someone who'd stood at the edge of that same darkness and knew what it looked like. "After David died," she said quietly, "I worked 20-hour days for 6 months straight. My assistant, the other Marcus, found me asleep at my desk so many times he started keeping a blanket in my office." She stared into her soup. "Everyone thought I was dedicated, driven, honoring my brother's memory.
The truth was, I couldn't go home. Couldn't sit in silence, couldn't let myself stop moving because if I stopped, you'd feel it. I'd feel all of it. And I didn't think I could survive that. But you did.
Did I? She looked at him. I'm 36 years old. I live alone. My last relationship ended because I couldn't give him more than whatever was left over after work took everything. I haven't taken a vacation in 3 years. I eat dinner at my desk 5 nights a week. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. I'm not surviving. I'm just existing in an expensive way. That's what I did after Denise, Marcus said. He set his mug down. Worked 70, 80 hours a week, took every call, every overtime shift. Told myself Zoe was better off with Janet, that I was providing for her. He rubbed his face. Truth was, I couldn't stand being in this cabin. Couldn't look at Zoe without seeing Denise. Couldn't be her father because being her father meant being alive, and being alive meant feeling everything I've lost. What changed? Zoe's teacher called me. Said Zoe was acting out, falling behind. Asked if everything was okay at home. Marcus's voice went rough. I didn't even know. Hadn't been paying attention. My daughter was drowning, and I was so deep in my own grief, I couldn't see it. So you came back. Cut my hours. Started coming home. Started actually being her father, instead of just the guy who paid the bills and showed up for bedtime. He looked at the photograph on the mantel. Denise, laughing. Zoe in her arms. County fair. Sunshine. A world that didn't exist anymore. We're still figuring it out, but at least now I'm present for it. Zoe's lucky, Vivian said. She has someone who came back for her. She paused. I don't have anyone to come back for. No one who'd notice if I disappeared for a week. My assistant would notice the missed meetings. My board would notice the empty chair. But me, the actual person? Nobody's looking for that. Maybe you're not letting them. Her eyes snapped to his, sharp, defensive. What's that supposed to mean? It means you just told me you push everyone away. Work is your wall, same as it was mine. You keep people at a distance because distance is safe. Can't lose someone if you never let them in. That's not... She stopped, closed her mouth, opened it again. That's exactly what my last therapist said, before I fired her. You fired your therapist for telling you the truth? I fired her for being right. There's a difference. Marcus almost laughed. Almost. So you know the problem. You just don't want to fix it. I don't know how to fix it. I've been this way so long, I don't remember anything else. David was the one who connected with people. He was warm, open, the kind of person strangers told their life story to in grocery store lines. I was always the other one, the driven one, the cold one. You're not cold. Everyone thinks I am. Everyone's wrong. Marcus leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Cold people don't cry about their dead brothers. Cold people don't ask about someone's daughter or care about the name of someone's dead wife. You're not cold, Vivian. You're scared, and there's a big difference. She stared at him. Her eyes were bright, too bright, and he watched her fight the tears with everything she had. Watched her jaw clench, watched her swallow hard. Watched her try to rebuild the armor that had kept her safe for 3 years. It didn't work. One tear slipped, then another. She wiped them away furiously, angrily, like they were a betrayal. Sorry, she said. Don't apologize for being human. I'm not usually... I know. It's okay. She pressed her hands against her eyes, took a shaking breath, then another. When she dropped her hands, her face was raw, open, stripped of every defense she'd built. You're a very strange man, Marcus Cole. I'll take that as a compliment. It was meant as one. She wiped her cheeks with the sleeve of Denise's flannel shirt.
No one talks to me the way you do. Everyone in my life either wants something from me or works for me.
Nobody tells me what I actually need to hear.
Well, I don't want anything from you, and I definitely don't work for you. So I guess I'm uniquely qualified. He offered a small smile. For whatever that's worth. More than you know. They fell into a silence that felt different from the ones before. Not awkward, not heavy, just honest. Two people who'd shown each other something real and were sitting with the weight of it. Marcus got up to add wood to the fire, checked the windows, listened to the storm. It wasn't letting up. If anything, the wind was getting worse, the temperature still dropping. The frost on the inside of the glass was thickening. "Tell me something about your brother," he said, settling back into his chair. "Not how he died, how he lived." Vivian's expression changed. The grief was still there, but something softer came with it. Memory. Love. The kind of pain that's worth carrying because what caused it was so good. "He was the funniest person I ever knew," she said. "Not in a performing way. He just saw the world differently, found humor in everything. Even his research papers. He studied neural networks. He'd hide jokes in the footnotes. His academic advisor hated it. His students loved it. Sounds like a good guy. The best. He was the one who convinced me to start the company. I was going to go into corporate consulting. Safe, predictable, good money. David said, "Why would you spend your life making someone else's dream work when we could build our own?" So we did. In his apartment, with $12,000 and more ambition than sense. And now it's worth a lot. More than either of us imagined. The IPO will value us at over $2 billion. She said it flatly, like the number meant nothing. David would have been amazed. He never cared about money. He cared about the work, the innovation, making things that helped people. I'm the one who turned it into a business. Sometimes I wonder if he'd even recognize what it's become. Would he be proud? That stopped her. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I don't know," she said finally. "I think he'd be proud of the technology. The sensors we make save lives. They're in medical devices, autonomous vehicles, aerospace systems. That part, yes. But the rest of it, the politics, the investors, the board meetings about shareholder value and market positioning, he'd hate that. He'd say we lost the point." "Did you?" "Maybe. Probably." She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "The board wants to go public. It's what we've been building toward for years. It would make everyone rich, me especially. But you don't want it." I sat in that boardroom 2 days ago, listening to them talk about valuation multiples and exit strategies, and all I could think was, David died for this? I've given up everything, relationships, health, happiness, for this? So a bunch of people in suits can get richer? Is that why you were really driving to Denver, for the meeting? Vivian looked at the fire, didn't look at him. "I wasn't driving to Denver." "What do you mean?" "I was running. Left the gala in Aspen, got in my car and just drove. Didn't care where, didn't have a plan. I was going to skip the board meeting, maybe fly to Mexico, maybe just keep driving until I ran out of road." She laughed bitterly. "Instead, I ran out of road on a patch of black ice and nearly died. Universe has a sick sense of humor. Or maybe the universe decided if you were going to run, it had put something in your path worth stopping for." She looked at him then, really looked, and Marcus felt the air between them change, thicken, charge, become something he hadn't felt in so long he'd almost forgotten what it was. "You say things like that," Vivian said softly, "and I don't know what to do with them." You don't have to do anything with them. Just hear them. I hear them. That's the problem. I hear them and they get inside me, and they make me want things I've spent years telling myself I can't have. Like what? Like this. She gestured between them. Sitting in a cabin with someone who sees me. Not the CEO, not the brand, not the quarterly earnings report. Just me. Her voice cracked on the last word. I can't remember the last time someone saw just me. Marcus wanted to say something, wanted to tell her that he saw her, saw the exhaustion and the loneliness and the grief and the strength underneath all of it. Saw the woman who'd built an empire to avoid feeling her brother's death and was only now realizing the empire had become her prison. But before he could speak, the wind hit the cabin like something solid. The whole structure shuddered. A sound like a gunshot cracked through the air. Tree branch, maybe, or something worse. And Vivian flinched hard, spilling what was left of her soup. Marcus was on his feet instantly. He crossed to the window, scraped frost from the glass, tried to see out. Nothing. Just white. Endless, howling white. How bad is it? Vivian asked. She was trying to keep her voice steady, but he could hear the fear underneath. Bad. He saw no point in lying. This isn't just a storm anymore. This is a full blizzard, the kind that lasts days. Days? Could be. Hard to say with mountain weather. But I have meetings. The board presentation is Tuesday. The product launch. None of that matters if you're dead. He said it without softness, without apology. Right now we focus on staying warm, staying fed, and staying alive. Everything else is noise. She looked like she wanted to argue. Her mouth opened, and then another gust hit the cabin hard enough to rattle every window, and something outside crashed with a sound that made them both freeze. Marcus watched the fight go out of her. Watched her look around the cabin, the rough wood walls, the kerosene lamps, the photographs on the mantel, and accept that her usual tools were useless here. No phone, no assistant, no schedule, no authority. Just a stranger's cabin and a stranger's kindness, and the storm pressing in on all sides. How much food do you have? She asked. Enough for a week, maybe more. Water? Well pump runs on the generator. Generator's full. We're okay. You keep saying that. Because it's true. She held his gaze for a long moment. Then something in her face shifted, the tension releasing, the control loosening, like a fist slowly opening. Okay, she said quietly. Okay. I trust you. 3 words. Simple. But they hit Marcus harder than the wind, harder than the cold, harder than anything the mountain had thrown at him tonight. Because trust was the one thing he'd stopped believing in after Denise. Trust meant relying on someone. Trust meant needing someone. And needing someone meant losing them. And losing them meant a pain so deep it rewrote your DNA. He didn't want to be trusted. Didn't want the weight of it. Didn't want this woman, this stranger with her gray eyes and her dead brother and her billion-dollar company, looking at him like he was safe. Because safe was the one thing Marcus Cole knew he wasn't. He'd failed Denise, missed the signs, let her dismiss her own symptoms because facing the truth was too frightening. And by the time they faced it, it was 8 months and a funeral and a 5-year-old girl asking why Mommy wouldn't wake up. He wasn't safe. He was a man who let people down when it mattered most. But Vivian was looking at him with those storm cloud eyes, trusting him. And the storm was getting worse, and his daughter was safe in town. And this woman was alive because he'd stopped. Because his father's voice in his head wouldn't let him drive past. You should rest, he said, his voice rougher than he intended. Take the couch. I'll take the chair. I can't take your... You can, and you will. You're injured and in shock. You need real rest. For once, she didn't fight him. She lay back, pulling the blankets up, and he watched her eyes grow heavy. The firelight played across her face, softening the bruises, warming the pallor. She looked young, younger than 36, younger than the weight she carried. "Marcus," she said, already half gone. "Yeah?" "You said your father's words. Everyone deserves to get home." Her eyes closed. "I don't think I've had a home in a very long time."
He sat in his chair after that, wrapped in a quilt, watching the fire burn, listening to the storm, listening to Vivian breathe. Slow, steady breaths that meant she'd finally let go, finally stopped fighting the exhaustion. And Marcus sat with the feeling growing in his chest, the feeling that rescuing this woman from her car had been the easy part, that keeping them both alive through whatever the mountain threw at them next was the real challenge. But underneath that, deeper, quieter, more frightening, was something else. Something he recognized, even though he'd sworn he'd never feel it again. Connection. The first thread of it, thin as spider silk, strong as steel cable, stretching between his chair and her couch, across the lamplight and the silence. He didn't want it, didn't ask for it, didn't know what to do with it, but it was there. And as the hours crawled past, and the storm continued its assault on the walls, and Vivian slept on his dead wife's couch, wearing his dead wife's clothes, Marcus Cole sat in the darkness and felt the ice around his heart begin to crack. Marcus woke to cold that didn't belong inside a house. His watch said 3:17. He'd been out maybe 2 hours. The fire in the stove had burned down to a faint orange glow, barely enough to see by. His breath came out in clouds. The temperature inside the cabin had dropped hard, 40s, maybe lower, and it was falling fast. He stood. His knees popped. His shoulder, where he'd taken the fall on the ice carrying Vivian, throbbed like someone had driven a nail into the joint. He moved to the stove, opened the door, stirred the embers with the poker, added kindling first, then 2 split logs. Waited. Watched the flame catch, climb, take hold. Warmth came back slow, too slow. He turned to check on Vivian, and his gut clenched. She was curled on the couch, buried under blankets, but her breathing was wrong. Quick, shallow, too fast. The breathing of a body that was losing the fight against the cold. He crossed to her in 3 steps, put his hand on her forehead. Her skin was clammy, almost waxy. When he pressed 2 fingers against her wrist, her pulse fluttered under his touch like a trapped bird. "Vivian!" He shook her shoulder. "Vivian, wake up!" She stirred, mumbled something that wasn't words. Her eyes opened, but didn't land on anything. Just drifted, unfocused, swimming. "Come on." He got his arm under her shoulders and pulled her upright. Her head lolled against his hand. "Sit up for me. I need you to wake up." "Tired," she said. The word came out mushy, like her mouth had forgotten how to shape it. "I know you're tired, but I need you awake. Need to make sure you're okay." He held her face between his hands, made her look at him. "Vivian, eyes on me." Her gaze found his, swam, focused. Lost focus again. "Where am I?" "My cabin. You were in a car accident, remember?" A long pause. Then something clicked behind her eyes. "The storm. Yes. I remember." "Good. What's your full name?" "Vivian Claire Ashford." "Where do you live?" "Denver. Cherry Creek neighborhood." She frowned. "Why are you quizzing me?" "Concussion protocol. Making sure your brain's still working." "My brain is fine.
The rest of me feels like it went through a meat grinder." That's the honest answer I was looking for. He stood, moved to the kitchen, filled the kettle from one of the water jugs, and set it on the stove. "I'm making tea." "I don't drink tea." "Tonight you do." He found the box of chamomile in the cabinet. Denise's tea. He hadn't touched it in 4 years. The box was dusty, but the bags inside were still sealed. He dropped one in each mug and waited for the water. While it heated, he watched Vivian from the corner of his eye. She was looking around the cabin now, really taking it in for the first time without the fog of hypothermia. Her gaze moved from the rough wood walls to the framed photographs on the mantel. She stopped on the one of Denise and Zoe. Denise laughing in the sunshine. Zoe, a toddler, in her arms. Both of them lit up like the world was made of nothing but good things. "Your wife was beautiful," Vivian said. Marcus followed her eyes to the photograph. Felt the familiar pull in his chest. Love and loss braided so tight he couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. "Yeah," he said. "She was." "How did you two meet?" He poured the hot water. Considered the question. Considered whether he wanted to go there, here, now, at 3 a.m. with a stranger on his couch. But the hour had a way of stripping away pretense. And something about Vivian, the way she asked, direct and unafraid, made him want to answer. "High school," he said, bringing the mugs over. She transferred in sophomore year, from Oakland, hated the cold, hated the mountains, swore she was going back to California the minute she graduated. He handed Vivian her mug, sat down in his chair. "We started dating junior year. Everyone said it wouldn't last, her parents especially." "Why especially?" Marcus looked at her, decided she could handle it. "Because I was the black kid from the wrong side of Copper Creek, and she was the new girl whose parents had plans for her that didn't include a mechanic's son." Vivian held his gaze, didn't flinch. "But it lasted." 13 years. Married at 20. Everyone said too young. I was working at the county garage. She was taking online classes for her teaching degree. We were broke and stupid and happier than anyone had a right to be. He sipped the tea. It tasted like dust and memory. Zoe came when we were 23. Unplanned, but wanted. Denise got a teaching job at the elementary school. We bought this cabin for nothing because it was falling apart. Spent 5 years fixing it up with our own hands. That sounds like a beautiful life. It was, until it wasn't. He stared at the liquid in his mug. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. By the time they found it, there was nothing to do but count the days. She lasted 8 months. Died in that bedroom right behind me. The wind moaned around the cabin, filling the space his words left behind. Vivian held her mug with both hands, and when she spoke, her voice was rough. David was 29. Car accident on Vail Pass. They said he died on impact. I don't know if that's true, or if they just tell you that so you don't think about the alternative. She paused. He was driving home from a conference. Called me an hour before it happened. Said he had a new idea for the sensor platform. Was excited. David got excited about everything. Last thing he said to me was, "I'll tell you about it tomorrow." There was no tomorrow.
No, there wasn't. She took a shaking breath. I got the call at 2 a.m. Drove to the hospital in my pajamas. They took me to a room and a doctor I'd never met told me my brother was dead and asked if I wanted to see the body. I said yes, and I walked in and he was just lying there, still. David was never still. He was always moving, talking, thinking, and he was just lying there like someone had turned him off. Marcus said nothing, because there was nothing to say, because he'd stood in that same room, looked at that same stillness,
felt that same impossible gulf between the person you loved and the body they'd left behind. "I haven't told anyone that," Vivian said. "About going to see him. About what it was like." "Thank you for telling me." "You're easy to tell things to. That's dangerous." "Why dangerous?" "Because I don't do this. I don't open up. I don't let people see the mess underneath."
And here I am, 3 in the morning, telling the stranger things I haven't told my therapist. She set her mug down. "What is it about you?" "Probably the cabin. Kerosene lamps and near-death experiences tend to lower people's defenses." She almost smiled. "Maybe. Or maybe it's you. Maybe you're just one of those people who makes it safe to be honest." Denise used to say that. Said I had a face people trusted. He rubbed the back of his neck. "I never understood it. I'm not exactly warm and fuzzy." "No, you're something better. You're steady. In a world full of people performing all the time, you're just there. Solid. Real." She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "I've been surrounded by performers my whole career. People who say what you want to hear. Who manage every interaction like a transaction. You don't do that." "I don't know how to do that. Grew up in a house where you said what you meant and meant what you said. My father didn't have time for games. When you're pulling people out of avalanches, you don't have time to be diplomatic. I think I would have liked your father. He would have liked you. He respected tough people. And you're tough, Vivian. Don't let anyone tell you different." They drank their tea in silence for a while. The fire was doing its job now. The cabin was warming, slowly, the cold retreating into the corners. But outside, the storm hadn't let up. If anything, the wind was changing, shifting direction, coming at the cabin from a new angle with a new fury. Marcus checked the windows, checked the walls for drafts, stuffed rags into the gaps he found. Vivian watched him work. "You should try to sleep again," he said. "I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see the car spinning. Feel the impact." She touched her bandaged temple. "My brain won't stop replaying it." "That's normal. Trauma does that. Puts the worst moments on a loop." "Does it ever stop?" "Eventually. Mine did." Took about a year after Denise before I could close my eyes without seeing the hospital room. He sat back down. "But it fades. The sharp edges round off. You never forget, but you stop reliving." "A year." She said it like a prison sentence. "I don't have a year. I have a board meeting on Tuesday and a product launch next month, and—" "You have right now. That's all anyone has." She looked at him. Something shifted in her expression. The CEO falling away, the armor dropping, and underneath it, just a woman who was tired and scared and hurting. "Tell me something true," she said. "Something you don't tell people." "Why?" "Because we're stuck here and we might die, and I want to know who I'm stuck with. The real you, not the version you show the world." Marcus leaned back in his chair. The fire popped. The wind pushed against the walls. He thought about deflecting, about giving her something surface level, something safe. But she'd given him David. She'd given him the hospital room at 2 in the morning and the stillness of her brother's body. She'd earned his truth. "I blame myself for Denise's death," he said. "But you said it was cancer. Stage 4. Nothing anyone could have—" She was sick for months before the diagnosis. Tired all the time, losing weight. Said her stomach hurt. I told her it was stress. Told her she was working too hard, needed to rest more. His voice cracked, and he let it. She believed me, because I was her husband, because she trusted me. And by the time she finally went to the doctor, it was everywhere. Liver, lungs, lymph nodes. 8 months. That's what my reassurance bought her. 8 months of dying.
Marcus, if I'd pushed her to go earlier, if I'd said, "This isn't normal, something's wrong, we need to get you checked out," if I'd been less afraid of the answer, you can't know that would have changed anything. Pancreatic cancer caught early has a 20% survival rate.
Caught late, it's less than 5. I didn't give her that 20%, Vivian. I took it from her because I was scared. The words hung in the air between them. 4 years he'd carried this stone in his chest that no amount of grief counseling or well-meaning advice could dissolve. The certainty that he'd failed the one person who'd trusted him most. Vivian set her mug down. She swung her legs off the couch, wincing at her ankle, and leaned forward until she was close enough to touch him. She didn't touch him. Not yet. Just got close. "Listen to me," she said. Her voice was different now. Not the CEO voice. Not the careful, controlled voice she used as armor. Something raw. Denise didn't die because you failed her. She died because cancer is a monster that doesn't care how much you love someone. You didn't take anything from her. You gave her 13 years of marriage, and a daughter, and a home, and a husband who loved her enough to be terrified of losing her. That's not... She chose you, Marcus. Married you against her parents' wishes. Built a life with you. Had a child with you. Stayed in these mountains she supposedly hated because you were here. That's not the choice of someone who thought you'd fail her. That's the choice of someone who knew exactly who you were and loved you for it. He couldn't speak. His throat had closed around something hot and sharp that he'd been swallowing for 4 years. His eyes burned and he clenched his jaw, fighting it, the way he always fought it. Because if he started, he wasn't sure he could stop. "You didn't fail her," Vivian said again. Quiet, certain. "And she wouldn't want you to spend the rest of your life believing you did." Something broke. Not dramatically. Not with a sound. Just a quiet internal collapse, like a wall giving way. Marcus pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes and breathed. Rough, shaking breaths that came from somewhere deeper than his lungs. Vivian didn't move, didn't try to comfort him, didn't say it was okay. Just sat there, present, solid, bearing witness to something he'd never let anyone see. It lasted maybe a minute, maybe less. When he dropped his hands, his face was wet, and he didn't care. "Your turn," he said, his voice wrecked. Something true. She owed him nothing, he knew that, but she nodded. "I told you I was running away. That's true. But I didn't tell you why. Not the real reason." She wrapped her arms around herself. 2 days ago, I sat in the board meeting and they presented the IPO timeline. 18 months of planning, $2 billion valuation. Everything David and I built, everything I sacrificed my entire life for, it was all right there. The finish line. And I felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. I sat there looking at charts and projections, and I thought, this is it? This is what I traded my brother's memory for? What I traded relationships and health and happiness for? So that a room full of people in expensive suits can get richer? What did you do? I got up and walked out. Didn't say a word. Just stood up, picked up my bag, and left. Drove to Aspen for the gala because I was already committed. Smiled and shook hands and made small talk for 3 hours. And then I got in my car and I drove into a blizzard because I couldn't stand to be Vivian Ashford for 1 more minute. That's not running. That's braking. Maybe there's not a difference anymore. She met his eyes. I don't want to go back, Marcus. For the first time in 3 years, I don't want to go back to that life. And that terrifies me more than this storm. Why? Because without the company, without the title, without the work, who am I? What's left? I built my entire identity around Ashford Technologies.
Take that away, and I'm just a woman alone in an expensive apartment with nothing to show for it but money and regret. That's not true, isn't it? No. Marcus leaned forward. You're a woman who built something from nothing, who carried her brother's dream when he couldn't carry it himself, who sat in my cabin at 3 a.m. and told a stranger the truth about herself because she was brave enough to stop pretending. He held her gaze. That's who you are without the title, Vivian. And that person is worth a hell of a lot more than any company. She broke then. Not the way he had, quiet and controlled. She broke like something that had been holding too long and couldn't hold any more. Tears spilled down her face, and she didn't try to stop them, didn't wipe them away, didn't hide behind her hands. She just let them come. And Marcus did something he hadn't done with anyone since Denise. He moved to the couch, sat beside her, and put his arms around her. Not a romantic gesture, not a calculated move. Just one broken person holding another because the world was cold and the storm was loud. And sometimes that's the only thing that helps. She pressed her face against his shoulder and cried. Hard, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. And he held on. Let her. Didn't try to fix it or stop it or make it better. Just held on. When the crying finally slowed, when her breathing steadied and her grip on his shirt loosened, she pulled back just enough to look at him. I'm sorry, she started. If you apologize for being human one more time, I'm putting you back out in the storm. A laugh broke through the tears, sudden, surprised, real. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. God, I'm a mess. Yeah, welcome to the club. Meetings are Tuesdays. She laughed again, and the sound did something to Marcus's chest that he wasn't prepared for. Made it expand, made it ache in a way that wasn't grief. Made it feel, for the first time in 4 years, like there was room in there for something other than loss. He stood up, moved back to his chair, put distance between them because the alternative was staying on that couch, and he didn't trust himself to stay on that couch. Get some rest, he said. For real this time. You'll wake me if something happens? I'll wake you. She lay back, pulled the blankets up. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her face blotchy, the bandage on her temple dark with dried blood. She looked nothing like a CEO. She looked like a woman who'd just put down something heavy she'd been carrying too long. Marcus. Yeah? Thank you. Not for saving me from the car. For this. For listening. For telling me the truth even when it hurt. She closed her eyes. Nobody's done that in a very long time. He didn't answer, watched her breathing slow, watched the tension leave her face as sleep took her. And he sat in his chair, with the fire dying and the storm screaming, and the feeling in his chest growing louder than both. He loved his wife, would always love his wife. Denise was woven into the fabric of who he was, inseparable from every good thing in his life, from Zoe, from this cabin, from the man he'd become. But Denise was gone, and he was here, and so was Vivian, and something was happening between them that he couldn't stop and wasn't sure he wanted to. At 5 a.m., the wind changed, dropped from a scream to a moan, then picked up again from a new direction, hitting the cabin from the north side with a force that made the walls groan. Marcus checked the stove, added the last of the split wood from the indoor stack. He'd need to get to the wood pile outside soon, which meant going out into the storm. He was calculating the risk when he heard it. A deep, low creak from above. The sound of old timber under pressure. The sound of weight building where weight shouldn't be. He looked up at the center beam. In the lamplight, he could see it bowing. Just slightly. Just enough. His blood went cold. He knew that sound, knew what it meant. His father had taught him, when the mountain puts weight on wood, the wood talks. And if you're smart, you listen. The beam creaked again, louder, and Marcus heard snow forcing its way through the shingles above, a soft hissing sound that shouldn't have been there. He moved. "Vivian!" He crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbed her around the waist, hauled her off the couch. She gasped, disoriented, clutching at him. "What? Marcus, what are you—" "Move! Now!" They cleared the couch by 4 feet when the roof came down. The sound was like the end of the world. Timber splitting, nails screaming, the crash of 200 pounds of snow and insulation and shingles slamming into the living room floor. Marcus threw himself over Vivian, covering her body with his. Something hit his shoulder, the bad one, and pain whited out his vision. Something else clipped the back of his head, and the world rang like a bell. Then silence. Not real silence, the settling kind. Creaks and groans and the whisper of snow sliding through the gap where the roof used to be. Marcus lifted his head, blinked through dust and pain. The couch where Vivian had been lying was buried under a pile of broken timber. Snow was already pouring through the hole above, filling the room, turning it into something that wasn't inside anymore. "Are you hurt?" he said, rolling off her. "I don't think so." She was shaking, her eyes wide with shock. "Are you?" Blood was running down his face from where the debris had hit him. His shoulder felt like it had been torn loose. But he could move, could think, could function. "I'm fine. We need to get out of this room. Rest of the roof could go." He pulled her up. She cried out when she put weight on her ankle, but stayed upright, gripping his arm with a strength that surprised him. They stumbled together through the debris toward the bedroom, the only room with its own support beam, the only room that might hold. He got the door open, got them both through, slammed it shut behind them. The bedroom was dark, small, cold, but the ceiling above them was solid, for now. Vivian collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. Marcus leaned beside her, one hand pressed against the cut on his head, feeling blood hot and wet between his fingers. "The cabin," Vivian started. "Living room's gone. The beam gave way. Snow weight was too much for the old timber." He slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor. "This room has its own support. We're safe here." "For how long?" He didn't answer, because the truth was, he didn't know. The temperature was dropping fast, with the roof open to the storm. They had no fire now, no stove, no heat source, just a bedroom, some blankets, and each other. Vivian sat down beside him, close, their shoulders touching. He could feel her shaking, cold, shock, fear, all of it running through her like a current. "We're going to make it through this," he said. "You keep saying that." "Because I keep meaning it." She turned to look at him, and even in the darkness, he could see her face, pale, scared, determined. She reached up and touched the cut on his head, her fingers gentle against the blood. "You saved my life again," she said. "Habit." "Is that all I am? A habit?" The question hung between them, heavy with everything they'd said tonight and everything they hadn't. Marcus felt her hand on his face, felt her fingers tracing the edge of the wound, felt the warmth of her skin against his. "No," he said. "That's not all you are." She didn't ask what else she was. He didn't tell her. But the answer was there in the space between them. Fragile, impossible, terrifying. Growing in the darkness like something that didn't need light to survive. The cold came for them fast. Without the stove, without the fire, without anything between them and the storm except walls and a roof that might not hold. The temperature in the bedroom dropped like a stone. Marcus could see his breath within 20 minutes. Within an hour, frost was forming on the inside of the window. He'd pulled every blanket he could find, the winter quilts from the closet, the sleeping bag from the hall, the throw from Denise's side of the bed that still smelled faintly of her lotion. He piled them all on the bed and told Vivian to get under them. "What about you?" she asked. "I'll stay on top of the covers." "That's stupid." "It's appropriate." "Marcus," she grabbed his arm. Her fingers were ice. "We just survived a roof collapse. I think we're past appropriate." She was right, and he knew it. The cold was already biting through his clothes, numbing his fingers, making his injured shoulder seize up. Staying on top of the covers in these temperatures wasn't noble. It was suicidal. He climbed under the blankets. They lay side by side, rigid, careful, maintaining the thin fiction that this was purely survival. But the cold was relentless, pushing through the layers, finding every gap. And gradually, inevitably, the space between them closed. Vivian pressed against his side first, seeking warmth. Then his arm went around her. Then her head found his shoulder. And the fiction dissolved. "This is insane," she whispered. "Yep." "We've known each other 12 hours. "Closer to 14. "Oh well, that changes everything." He felt her smile against his shoulder, felt it in his chest like a match striking. And despite the cold, despite the danger, despite everything he told himself about never letting anyone in again, Marcus Cole smiled in the dark. "Tell me something," Vivian said. "Tell me about a happy memory, something warm." "Why?" "Because I'm freezing and terrified, and I need to think about something other than the fact that the roof might kill us." Marcus thought. Zoe's 6th birthday. First one after Denise. I didn't know what to do. Janet offered to plan it, but I said no. I wanted to do it myself. Prove I could be the kind of father who throws birthday parties. How'd it go? Disaster. Burned the cake. Forgot to buy candles. The piñata was hung so high none of the kids could reach it. I ended up standing in the backyard, holding a 6-year-old on my shoulders while she swung a broom handle at a papier-mâché unicorn. Vivian laughed. A real laugh. Quiet, but real. Did she get it? Took her 15 minutes. She finally connected, and candy went everywhere, and every kid in the neighborhood dove for it like it was the Super Bowl. Marcus felt the memory warm something inside him. Zoe looked down at me from my shoulders and said, "Best party ever, Daddy." And I lost it. Right there in the backyard, in front of 10 kids and their parents. Crying like a baby because my daughter thought my terrible party was the best one ever. That's not a disaster. That's a perfect birthday. Yeah, I didn't know it at the time, but yeah, it was. Vivian was quiet for a moment. Then, I don't have memories like that. Happy ones. I have achievements, deals closed, milestones hit, revenue targets exceeded. But memories? The kind that make you feel something? She paused. I threw David a surprise party for his 30th birthday. Rented out his favorite restaurant, invited 50 people, hired a band he loved. It was perfect. Every detail planned, every moment orchestrated. Sounds amazing. You know what David said to me afterward? He said, "Viv, next year just take me to a diner and talk to me for 2 hours. That's all I ever want from you. Just your time." Her voice cracked. I never got to give him that. He died 3 months later, and I've spent 3 years thinking about what he meant, that all my planning, all my perfection, all my control, it meant nothing compared to just being present with someone you love. Marcus tightened his arm around her. Not a romantic gesture, a human one. The gesture of someone who understood that some truths arrive too late and cut too deep. "You're giving it now," he said. "What?" "Your time. Your presence. Right here. This is what David was asking for." She pressed her face against his chest. He felt her tears soak through his shirt, warm against his skin in the freezing room. He held her and let her cry, and didn't try to fix it, because some things can't be fixed. They can only be felt. When she stopped, when her breathing steadied, she pulled back just enough to look at him. Even in the near-total darkness, he could feel her eyes on his face. "Marcus." "Yeah, I need you to know something. This, whatever this is, it's not the storm. It's not adrenaline. It's not because you saved me, or because we're trapped, or because I'm scared." She paused, steadied herself. "I haven't felt this seen in years. Maybe ever. And I need you to know that before whatever happens next, whether we get out of here or we don't." His heart was hammering. He could feel it in his throat, in his fingertips, in every place her body touched his. "I haven't felt anything since Denise," he said. 4 years. Nothing. I convinced myself the part of me that could feel like this died with her." He found her hand under the blankets, laced his fingers through hers. "You're proving me wrong, and that scares me more than this storm." "Why?" "Because if I let myself feel this, and then lose you too—" "You can't live your whole life preparing for loss, Marcus. That's not living. That's just dying slow," says the woman who runs billion-dollar companies to avoid feeling her brother's death. Maybe we're both experts at avoiding the thing we need most. Maybe. The wind died. Not gradually, suddenly, like someone had turned off a switch. The howling that had been constant for nearly 2 days just stopped. The silence that followed was so complete it rang in Marcus's ears. Then the wind came back, harder than before. A sound like a freight train. No, louder than a freight train. Louder than anything Marcus had ever heard. And it hit the cabin with a force that made the bedroom walls flex. He heard wood crack somewhere in the structure. Heard the groan of joints being pushed past their limit. He pulled Vivian closer, covered her head with his arm. The window exploded inward, glass and snow and wind pouring into the room like water through a broken dam. Cold hit them like a physical assault, stealing breath, stealing thought, stealing everything except the primal need to survive. "Hold on," Marcus shouted over the roar. "Don't let go." She gripped him with both hands, even the injured one, pain forgotten in the terror of the moment. And they held each other as the storm tried to tear the room apart around them. It lasted 30 seconds, maybe a minute. Felt like an hour. Then the wind settled back to its previous howl, still brutal, but no longer apocalyptic. Snow covered everything. The bed, the floor, them. The broken window let in a steady stream of cold air that turned the room into a freezer. Marcus moved fast, grabbed the dresser, heavy oak, old, immovable under normal circumstances, and adrenaline dragged it across the floor to block the window. It didn't seal completely, but it cut the wind to a fraction of what it had been. "Vivian!" He was back at the bed, pulling snow off the blankets, off her. "Talk to me. Are you hurt?" "No. Cold. So cold." Her teeth were chattering so hard she could barely form words. "Marcus, I can't feel my hands." I know. Come here." He pulled the wet blankets off, found the sleeping bag underneath, still dry, still intact, and zipped them both into it. It was tight, barely enough room for 2 people, forcing them together in a way that left no space for pretense or distance. Her body was shaking against his. Violent, uncontrollable tremors that scared him more than the wind. Hypothermia setting in. Core temperature dropping. If he didn't warm her fast. He rubbed her arms, her back, her hands between his. Generated friction, generated heat, poured everything he had into keeping her warm. His own body was screaming, shoulder on fire, head pounding, fingers numb. But he ignored it, pushed it down, locked it away. Stay with me, Vivian. Stay with me. I'm here. Barely a whisper. I'm here. Keep talking. Tell me anything. Tell me about your company. Tell me about your first day as CEO. Worst day of my life, she was slurring. Bad sign. After David walked into his office, his coffee mug was still on the desk, still had coffee in it. 3 days old. Nobody had touched it. Nobody wanted to be the one to throw it away. What did you do? I drank it. Cold, 3-day-old coffee. Sat in his chair and drank his coffee and told myself if I could do that, drink that terrible coffee in that empty office, I could do anything. That's the most disgusting motivational story I've ever heard. She laughed. Weak, shaky, but a laugh. Her trembling eased fractionally. The friction was working. The sleeping bag was trapping their combined heat. Slowly, degree by degree, the killing cold retreated. Marcus? Yeah? If we don't make it, we're making it. But if we don't, I want you to know this was the most honest 48 hours of my life. Everything I've been running from, everything I've been avoiding, you made me face it. And I'm grateful. Even if this is the end, I'm grateful. This is not the end. I didn't pull you out of that car and carry you through a blizzard and survive a roof collapse just to let you die in a sleeping bag. Stubborn. Damn right. Denise was right about you. About what? You're the kind of person people trust. The kind who shows up. Who stays. Her hand found his face in the darkness. Her fingers had warmed slightly, still cold, but alive. Present. You showed up for me, Marcus. A stranger in a wrecked car. You could have driven past, should have driven past. But you didn't. Everyone deserves to get home. I am home. She said it so quietly, he almost missed it. Right here. This is the closest I've felt to home since David died. Something cracked open in Marcus's chest. Not the old wound. Something new. Something that had been sealed so long he'd forgotten it existed. A door. A possibility. A space where something other than grief could live. He kissed her. He didn't plan it, didn't decide it. It happened the way breathing happens, because the body knows what it needs even when the mind is too afraid to ask. His lips found hers in the darkness, cold against cold, and for a second, neither of them moved. Then she kissed him back. Not gently, not carefully, with everything she had. Every year of loneliness, every night of pretending she was fine, every board meeting where she smiled while dying inside. She kissed him like she was trying to climb out of her own skin and into something better. And he kissed her back the same way. 4 years of grief and guilt and frozen silence pouring out of him into this woman who understood, who knew, who carried her own version of the same impossible weight. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead against hers. This is crazy, he said. Completely. I'm a mechanic in a mountain town. You're a billionaire CEO. Former CEO. We've known each other. I don't care. She gripped his shirt. I don't care about any of that. None of it matters. What matters is this, that you see me, that I see you, that for the first time in years, I feel something other than tired and scared and alone. Vivian, don't talk yourself out of this. Don't do the thing where you list all the reasons it can't work and convince yourself it's noble to walk away. I've watched men do that my whole life. Decide for me what I can and can't handle. I'm not deciding for you. Then stop arguing and let this be real. He pulled her closer, felt her heart beating against his chest, fast, strong, alive. Felt her breath on his neck, felt her hands fisting in his shirt like she was afraid he'd disappear if she let go. It's real, he said. God help us both. It's real. They lay tangled together in the sleeping bag as the night crawled toward morning. The cold pressed in from every direction, but couldn't reach them. Not anymore. Not with the heat they were generating between them. Marcus stayed awake, listening to the storm, monitoring the walls, checking that the dresser was holding against the broken window. Around 5, the wind began to fade. Not a trick this time, a genuine retreat. The howling dropped to a moan, then a whisper, then something close to silence. The snow kept falling, but softer, gentler. The violence had gone out of it. Marcus, Vivian stirred against him. Is it? Yeah, I think it's breaking. Finally. She exhaled, a long, shuddering breath that carried the weight of everything they'd survived. We made it. We made it. They lay still for a few more minutes, neither wanting to move, neither wanting to break the seal of warmth they'd built. But reality was coming. Marcus could feel it. The growing light, the shifting sounds, the world waking up outside their broken window. We need to get out of the cabin, he said. The structure's compromised. Another snow load could bring the rest down. Where do we go? Shed out back. My father built it. Solid as a bunker. We wait there for search and rescue. How will they find us? Your assistant, your Marcus. He'll have reported you missing. And the county checks on residents after storms like this. Someone will come. She sat up in the sleeping bag, wincing as every injury made itself known at once. And if they don't? They will. But if it takes time, we hike out. Once your ankle can handle it. He unzipped the sleeping bag, and the cold hit them both like a slap. Vivian gasped. Marcus gritted his teeth and moved fast. Found coats, found boots, found gloves. He helped Vivian into Denise's winter gear. Too big, but warm. Packed what he could into a bag. Remaining water, the first aid kit, canned food, blankets. Getting through the destroyed living room was brutal. Snowdrifts 3 feet deep, broken timber everywhere. Marcus went first, testing each step, then reached back for Vivian. She took his hand without hesitation and held on tight. They reached the front door. Marcus pushed it open, and they stepped out into a world transformed. White everywhere. Blinding, total white. But above it, blue sky. Clean and clear and impossibly blue after 2 days of nothing but gray. The sun was trying to break through, weak, but there, alive. Marcus heard Vivian make a small sound beside him. He looked over and found her staring at the sky with tears running down her face. What? He asked. It's beautiful. I didn't think I'd ever see the sky again. He wanted to say something, wanted to tell her he'd felt the same way, not just about the sky, but about everything. About feeling, about connection, about the terrifying possibility that his life wasn't over just because Denise's was. But before he could find the words, a sound cut through the silence. Distant, but unmistakable. The thump of helicopter rotors. Vivian's hand tightened on his. They're coming, she said. Yeah. Marcus. She turned to face him. Her face was bruised and swollen, her hair matted. Denise's coat hanging off her shoulders. She'd never looked less like a CEO. She'd never looked more beautiful. When they take me, the hospital, my assistant, all of it, this doesn't end. Tell me this doesn't end. This doesn't end. Promise me, because I'm going to get on that helicopter and they're going to take me to a hospital, and Marcus, my assistant Marcus, is going to hand me a phone with 100 messages on it, and my whole life is going to come rushing back, and I need to know that this was real, that you're real, that you'll still be here when the noise dies down. He caught her face in his hands, looked her dead in the eyes. Vivian Ashford, I pulled you out of a wrecked car in the worst storm these mountains have ever seen. I carried you through a blizzard. I held you while my cabin fell apart. I told you things I've never told anyone. He brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. You think I'm going to let a helicopter take that away? She kissed him, hard, desperate. The kind of kiss people give when they're afraid it might be the last one. And he kissed her back with everything he had, everything he'd been too afraid to feel for 4 years. The helicopter was closer now. They could see it, a dark shape against the blue, circling, searching. It had spotted the cabin. The destroyed roof was impossible to miss from the air. I don't have your number, Vivian said, pulling back. I don't know how to find you. Copper Creek, Colorado, Marcus Cole. I'm the only one. That's not enough. What if... It's enough. I'll find you. Or you'll find me. But we'll find each other. She dug in the pockets of Denise's coat and found a pen. An old ballpoint that had probably been there for years. She grabbed his hand, pushed his sleeve up, and wrote on his forearm her number. And beneath it 3 words. Don't forget me. Not possible, he said. The helicopter was landing now, in the field beyond the cabin. 3 rescue workers in orange gear were already climbing out, moving toward them through the snow. Ma'am, are you injured? The lead rescuer, a woman with kind eyes, was already assessing Vivian. Can you walk? Sprained ankle, possible concussion, bruised arm. Vivian rattled it off like a medical chart. Still a CEO, even in borrowed clothes and dried blood. I can walk, with help. They had a stretcher. They were loading her onto it despite her protests. One of them asked Marcus if he needed evacuation too. I'm staying, he said. Need to secure the property. My daughter's safe in town. Another storm system's moving in, the younger rescuer warned. You might be stuck again. I'll manage. Marcus, no! Vivian was fighting the stretcher straps. Come with me, please. He went to her, took her hand. I can't. Not yet. The cabin. It's all I have left of my father. Of Denise. I need to take care of it. He watched her understand, watched her see what this place meant to him. Not just a building, but a vessel for every memory that mattered. Every photograph, every piece of wood his father had cut. Every room where Denise had lived and laughed and died. Okay, she whispered. Okay, but call me the second you have service. The second. I will. And Marcus, she squeezed his hand so hard it hurt. I love you. I know that's insane. I know it's been 2 days. But I love you. And I'm not going to pretend I don't just because it doesn't make sense. The rescue workers were watching. The helicopter blades were spinning. The world was pulling them apart. I love you too, Marcus said. Now get on the helicopter before I change my mind about staying. She laughed through tears. They loaded her in. She pressed her hand against the window. He pressed his against it from outside. The glass was cold between their palms. The helicopter lifted. Snow kicked up in a blinding cloud. Marcus stepped back, shielding his eyes, watching the machine rise into the blue sky. He watched until it was a speck, until the sound faded, until he was alone again with the wind and the silence and the ruins of the only home he'd ever known. He looked down at his forearm, her number in blue ink, and 3 words that made his chest ache. Don't forget me. He rolled his sleeve down carefully, turned back to the cabin, and started the work of saving what could be saved. He worked until his hands bled, 6 hours in the wreckage of the cabin, pulling out what mattered. Photo albums from the hall closet, water-damaged but intact. Denise's jewelry box. Zoe's baby book with its careful handwriting and tiny footprints. His father's camera, still in its leather case, somehow untouched. The wooden jewelry box he'd been carving for Zoe's birthday, only slightly cracked along one edge. He covered the hole in the roof with tarps and plywood from the shed, shut off the water main, drained the pipes, did everything a man does when he's saying goodbye to a place, without admitting that's what he's doing. By late afternoon, his truck started on the first try. He sat behind the wheel for a long moment, staring at the cabin through the windshield. 50 years it had stood. His father had built it with his own hands. Marcus had rebuilt it with Denise. Zoe had taken her first steps in the living room that was now buried under snow and broken timber. He put the truck in gear and drove down the mountain. The roads were barely passable, plowed just enough for emergency vehicles. It took 3 hours to make a drive that normally took 40 minutes. But when he finally pulled up in front of Janet's house in Copper Creek and saw the lights on, saw Zoe's silhouette in the window, something in his chest unlocked so fast it almost knocked him sideways. Zoe was out the door before he'd killed the engine. "Daddy!" She launched herself at him the moment his boots hit the ground. "Daddy, Daddy, we were so worried. Grandma said you were stuck in the storm, and I thought... I'm okay, baby." He picked her up. His shoulders screamed. He didn't care. "I'm okay. I'm sorry I scared you." "Don't ever do that again." She buried her face in his neck. Her whole body was shaking. "Promise me." "I promised to try." He carried her inside. Janet was waiting in the kitchen doorway, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, arms crossed in the way that meant she'd been terrified and was now furious about it. "Don't you hate Janet me, Marcus Cole." But her voice cracked, and she pulled him into a hug that nearly broke his ribs. "You look like hell." "Feel like it too." "Sit down, there's soup, and you're not driving anywhere else tonight." He didn't argue. Let Janet feed him. Let Zoe climb into his lap and chatter about her 2 days with Grandma, the cookies they'd baked, the movie they'd watched, the puzzle they'd finished. Let himself be taken care of for the first time in longer than he could remember. After Zoe was asleep, curled up in Janet's guest room with her stuffed dragon and the nightlight that threw stars on the ceiling, Marcus borrowed Janet's phone. 23 missed calls on his own dead phone. 17 from the county. 4 from Zoe's school. 1 from Tommy Richardson, thanking him for the furnace repair. And 1 voicemail from a number he didn't recognize. He played it. Vivian's voice filled his ear, and the sound of it hit him somewhere between his ribs and his spine. "Marcus, it's me. I'm at the hospital. They're keeping me overnight for observation, but I'm fine. Everything's fine." A pause. A shaky breath. "The doctor said I was lucky. That if I'd been out there much longer..." Another pause. Longer. "Anyway, I wanted you to know I'm okay. That I'm thinking about you. That I meant what I said. Every word." Her voice dropped. "Call me when you can. Please." He saved the message, stepped outside onto Janet's porch. The sky was full of stars. More stars than anyone who'd never lived in the mountains could imagine. The air was cold and clean, and so quiet, He could hear his own heartbeat. He dialed. She answered on the second ring. "Marcus? Hey. Oh, thank God." He heard her exhale, heard the relief in it, the weight it released. "Are you okay? Where are you?" "Janet's house, with Zoe, safe and warm." "Zoe, she's okay?" "She's perfect, asleep. Told me I'm never allowed to scare her again." "Smart girl." Vivian laughed, and the sound traveled through the phone like heat through cold air. "I've been lying here staring at the ceiling for 3 hours, trying not to call you first." "Why didn't you?" "Because I was afraid you'd answer and tell me it was a mistake, that we got carried away, that it was just the storm." "It wasn't just the storm." "I know, but I needed to hear you say it." Marcus sat down on the porch steps, looked up at the stars. "How are you, really?" "Banged up. Concussion confirmed. Ankle's a bad sprain, not broken. Arm's bruised, but functional. They want to keep me one more night for observation." She paused. "My assistant, the other Marcus, showed up 20 minutes after I arrived. Had 3 phones, 2 tablets, and a look on his face like he wanted to murder me and hug me at the same time." "Sounds about right." "He filed missing persons reports with 5 agencies. Had search parties organized before the storm even broke. He's very efficient." "I like him already." "You'd hate him. He color codes everything." Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice was different, softer, stripped of the humor. "Marcus, when can I see you?" "I need a few days. Zoe comes first." She was scared. "I can't just disappear again right after." Of course she comes first. I would never ask you to." "I know you wouldn't. That's one of the reasons I love you." Silence. He could hear her breathing. Then, "Say that again." "I love you." Again. "I love you, Vivian. And I'm going to keep saying it until you stop needing to hear it. And then I'll keep saying it anyway." "That might be a very long time." "I've got time." They talked for another hour, about everything and nothing. The cabin, the insurance, her company, his daughter, the impossible logistics of a mountain mechanic and a Denver CEO trying to build something that made no sense on paper, but felt inevitable in practice. "Next weekend," she said finally. "Could you come to Denver? Bring Zoe if you want. I'd love to meet her." The idea of his 2 worlds colliding terrified him, but it also felt right. "Let me talk to her about it." "No pressure, whatever she's comfortable with." "I'll call you tomorrow." "I'll be waiting." A beat. "Marcus?" "Yeah?" "Thank you. For stopping. For not driving past." "Everyone deserves to get home, remember?" "I remember." Her voice caught. "Good night." "Good night, Vivian." He ended the call and sat on the porch for a long time, holding the phone, watching stars. 4 days later, he told Zoe. They were making dinner together, grilled cheese and tomato soup, her favorite, when he brought it up. He'd rehearsed a dozen versions in his head, threw them all out, and went simple. "Zoe, there's something I need to tell you." She looked up from buttering bread, instantly wary. "Is it bad?" "No, baby, it's not bad, I met someone, during the storm. A woman." Zoe's eyes went wide. "A woman? Like a girlfriend woman?" "Maybe. It's new. I don't know what it is yet. But I wanted you to know about her." He set down the spatula, gave her his full attention. "Her name is Vivian. She was in a car accident, and I helped her. We ended up stuck in the cabin together during the storm." Zoe processed this with the terrifying directness of a 9-year-old. Is she nice? Very nice. And smart. And funny. Do you love her? Yeah, kiddo. I think I do. Does she love you? She says she does. Zoe was quiet for a moment, buttered the bread, flipped it. Then, without looking up, Daddy? Yeah? Is it okay that you love her, even though you loved Mommy? There it was, the question he'd been dreading. The one that mattered more than anything Vivian or Marcus or the storm or the mountain could throw at him. He turned off the stove, pulled out the chair next to Zoe, sat down so they were eye level. Come here, Zoe. She climbed into his lap. He wrapped his arms around her and breathed in the smell of her hair, strawberry shampoo and butter, and tried to find the right words for the biggest truth he'd ever have to explain. Your mom will always be my first love. Always. She gave me you, and you're the best thing in my world. Nothing and no one changes that. Ever. He felt her relax, just slightly. But loving Vivian doesn't mean I love Mommy less. Love doesn't work like that. It doesn't run out or get used up. Your heart just gets bigger. Zoe thought about this. Like when I got Mr. Whiskers. I still loved Mommy, even though I loved Mr. Whiskers too. Exactly like that. Okay, she nodded. Then, can I meet her? You want to? Yeah, if she's important to you, I should know her. That's what Grandma says. Saturday morning, Denver Museum of Nature and Science. Marcus and Zoe arrived early, Zoe vibrating with nervous energy the entire 3-hour drive. What if she doesn't like me? Zoe asked as they crossed the parking lot. Impossible. You're the coolest 9-year-old on the planet. What if I don't like her? Then you tell me, and we figure it out together. Vivian was waiting outside the entrance. Jeans, sweater, hair down. No trace of the corporate armor Marcus had seen pieces of in the cabin. She looked nervous, genuinely, visibly nervous. And it made Marcus's chest ache because this woman, who ran a billion-dollar company, was terrified of meeting a 9-year-old girl. Then she saw them, and her face changed. The anxiety melted into something warm and open and real. You must be Zoe, she said, crouching slightly. I've heard so much about you. Zoe studied her. 9 years old with Denise's eyes and Marcus's gift for reading people. Did you really crash your car in a blizzard wearing a fancy dress? Vivian laughed, surprised, genuine. I really did. Very stupid of me. Daddy says you're smart. Your dad is generous. I'm smart about some things and really dumb about others. Driving in Colorado winter storms is one of the dumb things. Zoe considered this, then nodded. That's okay. Everyone's dumb about something. I'm dumb about math. I love math. Maybe I could help you sometime. Maybe. Zoe slipped her hand into Marcus's, still cautious, still deciding. But when they got to the dinosaur exhibit, Vivian asked Zoe which one was her favorite, and then actually listened. Not the polite half-listening of adults who are waiting for their turn to talk, but real listening, the kind where you ask follow-up questions and remember the answers. By the planetarium, Zoe sat between them. When the lights went down and the stars came on, she reached for Vivian's hand. Marcus watched it happen from the other side and felt something shift inside him that he'd thought was permanent. The wall, the barrier, the thing he'd built between himself and the possibility of happiness. It didn't crumble. It just quietly opened a door. After the museum, pizza. After pizza, walking around downtown. Zoe ran ahead, pointing things out, dragging Vivian by the hand to see a funny statue, a store window, a dog she wanted to pet. She's incredible, Vivian said quietly to Marcus. She gets it from her mother. She gets it from both of you, Vivian watched Zoe practicing cartwheels on a patch of grass. Marcus, I need to tell you something. Okay. I told the board I'm stepping down, as CEO. I'm staying on as Chief Innovation Officer. Still involved, but someone else runs the day-to-day. She took a breath. And I'm looking at property in Copper Creek. He stopped walking. You're what? I don't want to be in Denver anymore. I don't want the corner office or the view of the city or the calendar full of meetings that don't mean anything. I want to be where you are, where Zoe is. I want to build something real.
Vivian, you can't upend your entire life for what? For love? For happiness? Watch me. She turned to face him. I've spent 3 years building an empire to avoid feeling my brother's death. You showed me what I was doing, showed me what I was missing. I'm not going back to that. I can't. What about the IPO? It'll happen with or without me in the big chair. David's legacy isn't a stock price, Marcus. It's the technology, the innovation, the things we built that help people. I can still do that work, the work I actually love, without killing myself in the process. He stared at her. This woman who'd crashed into his life during a blizzard and refused to leave. This stranger who'd become essential in ways he couldn't explain and didn't want to. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. The weeks that followed proved she meant it. Vivian came to Copper Creek every weekend, stayed at the bed and breakfast in town, spent her days with Marcus and Zoe, helping with homework, learning to snowshoe, playing cards around the kitchen table, falling into the rhythm of a life so different from her own that it should have felt foreign, but instead felt like coming home. Zoe warmed to her fast, faster than Marcus expected. The careful distance of their first meeting dissolved into genuine affection. Zoe showing Vivian her rock collection, reading to her from dragon books, teaching her the names of every constellation visible from the cabin. She talks to Mommy's picture about you, Marcus told Vivian on the phone one night after Zoe was asleep. Tells her about things you did together. Last night, she told Denise you helped her with long division and only got frustrated twice. Vivian was quiet for a long moment. Is that okay? That she talks about me to Denise? It's more than okay. It means she's making room for you. In her own way, on her own terms. The cabin reconstruction started in March. New design, bigger, more open, built for the life Marcus was building instead of the one he'd lost. Vivian contributed ideas. Zoe picked the color for her bedroom. Janet knitted curtains for the kitchen. Even Tommy Richardson showed up one afternoon with a casserole and unsolicited opinions about roof pitch. In May, on a Tuesday evening that felt ordinary until it suddenly wasn't, Zoe looked up from her homework and said, Dad, when are you going to ask Vivian to marry you? Marcus nearly dropped the pan he was washing. What? Because I think you should. She makes you happy. She makes me happy. And she's here all the time anyway, so she might as well live here. Zoe, it's not that simple. Why not? You love her. She loves you. She loves me. I love her. Zoe ticked each point off on her fingers. That's 4 loves. That's enough. 4 loves. That's enough. Marcus repeated it to Vivian that weekend, standing in the frame of the half-built cabin with sawdust in his hair and his grandmother's ring in his pocket. Zoe's been doing math, he said. She told me. Called me last night to explain the equation. Vivian was smiling. Had been smiling since she arrived. She's very thorough. Gets it from her mother. Marcus took a breath. Vivian. Yes? I had a speech planned. Of course you did. It was good. Long. Talked about the storm and the cabin and how you changed everything. I'm sure it was beautiful. But Zoe said I should just ask. So I'm just asking. He pulled the ring from his pocket. Simple, elegant. A single diamond in white gold,
worn smooth by decades on his grandmother's finger. "Will you marry me?" Vivian looked at the ring, looked at him, looked at the cabin rising around them. New walls on old foundations, future built on past. "Your grandmother's?" she asked. "Yeah, it's not fancy."
Not what you're probably... Yes. I know it's not a big diamond, or... Marcus, yes. Yes? Yes, 1,000 times yes. She was crying and laughing and reaching for him all at once. He slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit like it had been waiting for her. And then she was in his arms, and he was lifting her off the ground, and somewhere behind them, Zoe was screaming, "She said yes! She said yes!" at the construction workers, who broke into applause. They married in June. The cabin was finished just in time, still smelling of fresh paint and new wood, the great room filled with wildflowers Zoe had picked from the meadow. 30 guests. No bridesmaids, no groomsmen, just family and friends, and the mountains standing witness, the way they'd stood witness to everything that came before. Zoe stood beside Vivian as her maid of honor. Purple dress, serious face, holding a bouquet like it was a sacred object. Marcus's father's best friend, a retired search and rescue captain named Bill Harrigan, officiated. He talked about Raymond Cole, about the mantra that had defined his life and his son's. "Everyone deserves to get home," Bill said, looking between Marcus and Vivian. "Ray said that 1,000 times, but I don't think even he understood the full truth of it. Because sometimes, home isn't coordinates on a map. Sometimes, home is a person you haven't met yet. And sometimes, the only way to find that person is to drive into the worst storm of your life and refuse to pass by." Marcus took Vivian's hands, felt them warm and strong and steady in his. "I promise to see you," he said, "every day. The real you, not the title or the achievement or the armor, just you." "I promise to choose you," she said, "every day. You and Zoe. To build a life that honors what came before and reaches toward what comes next." The kiss drew the loudest cheer from Zoe. That fall, when the aspens turned gold and the air carried the first bite of winter, Vivian told him she was pregnant. Anniversary of the blizzard. Sitting on the deck of the cabin they built together, watching the mountains do what mountains do. Stand there, immovable, patient, outlasting everything. 8 weeks, she said. Marcus went still. Then he put his hand on her stomach and said, "We're going to need a bigger cabin." She laughed until she cried. They named her Sarah Denise Cole, called her Sally. Born at dawn on a Sunday in May, 7 pounds 3 ounces, with her mother's dark hair and her father's steady gaze. Zoe met her sister 1 hour after she was born, touched the tiny hand, whispered, "She's so small." "You were that small once," Marcus said. "No way." "Way." Zoe looked up at him, then at Vivian, exhausted and radiant in the hospital bed, then back at Sally. "Our family got bigger," she said. "Yeah, baby, it did." Janet held her new granddaughter that afternoon and said the thing Marcus needed to hear more than anything. "Denise would have loved this, would have loved seeing you like this, happy, full, alive again." She looked at him with Denise's eyes, because that's where Denise had gotten them, and smiled. "She'd be so proud of you, Marcus." On the second anniversary of the blizzard, they threw a party at the cabin. Everyone came. Tommy Richardson cornered Vivian in the kitchen. "You know," he said, "if your car hadn't gone off that road, none of this exists." "Best accident of my life," Vivian said. "Not an accident," Tommy replied. "The mountain knew what it was doing." Later that night, Marcus found Vivian on the deck. Sally in her arms, Zoe beside her, pointing out constellations. He stood in the doorway and watched them. His family,
whole and improbable and real, and felt a gratitude so deep it was almost pain. "Come here, Dad," Zoe called. "Come see Orion." He joined them, put his arms around all three. Sally gurgled. Zoe leaned against his side. Vivian turned her face up and kissed him softly. "I love you," he said. To all of them. To the mountains. To the ghost of his father who'd given him the words. To the ghost of Denise who'd given him the courage. "Love you too, Daddy," Zoe said. "Love you," Vivian whispered. Snow began to fall. Soft. Gentle. Nothing like the storm that had started everything. Marcus pulled his family closer and looked up at the sky. His father had said it 1,000 times. Everyone deserves to get home. And for 30 years, Marcus thought he'd understood what that meant. Thought it meant shelter, safety, a roof and 4 walls, and heat against the cold. He was wrong. Home was Zoe's laugh, Vivian's hand in his, Sally's heartbeat against his chest, Janet's soup on the stove, Tommy's unsolicited advice. The cabin his father built, torn down by a storm, rebuilt into something new. Home was the choice to keep showing up, to keep loving even when it hurt, to keep opening the door even after it had been slammed shut. Home was not a place. Home was this. And Marcus Cole, who had driven into a blizzard to save a stranger and found the rest of his life instead, held his family under the falling snow and knew, with a certainty as solid as the mountains around them, that he was finally, completely, irreversibly home.